Hello once again, everyone. Thanks for tuning in and listening to another edition of AIW's The Card is Going to Change. Before we get into this week's episode, of course, the shout out to our sponsors that we always do who have helped us bring the show to you for free each and every week on whichever platform you choose to listen. Thanks to Angelo's Pizza. They are located on Madison Avenue in Lakewood, Ohio. If you haven't tried it, absolutely go out and do so. If you live in Northeast Ohio, we talk about helping small businesses during this time of year and in general, especially this year in 2020. They have been owned and operated locally for their entire existence, and certainly, just like many else, could use your support. So you can order takeout or delivery, or they are doing some socially distant dining there at Angelo's on Madison Avenue in Lakewood, Ohio. Thanks, of course, to, we'll say, Pollyanna DIY. Hey, he may still have stuff for sale. Don't know. Might as well check it out. Thrift store Jobber. If you've got some unemployment money and you want to get a tattoo, go to Voodoo Monkey Tattoo. As for Sean Jaundice, he's always been a great supporter and sponsor multiple times throughout these years. And then, of course, Smart Mark Video and IWTV. Thanks to them, watching AIW has never been easier. You can purchase DVDs or MP4s from smartmarkvideo.com. They've got the entire AIW collection there. Or go to independentwrestling.tv, download the IWTV app, and use the code ABSOLUTE. Get a 5-day free trial and watch a rotating AIW archive, as well as other independent wrestling shows that are on there, including the award-winning Masked Wrestler, which just won some sort of an award recently. I don't know the name of it, but good for them. That's awesome. And other than that, hey, we'll roll into this week's episode. John Thorne, AIW owner, joining us as always, of course. And my name is Steve Guy, your moderator of sorts. And yeah, award winning. Oh, we're up for some IWTV awards, are we not, John Thorne? Or matches are, at least. Lee Moriarty and Alex Shelley are up for Match of the Year.
And I think Lee Moriarty is up for Wrestler of the Year. But everything else, I guess, did not make the finals. So thanks AIW faithful for not getting us more nominations.
Yeah, how does the Karate Man vignettes not make it for best promo in vignettes? I mean,
everyone's slacking.
Ridiculous. So
we got nothing to talk about this week, as you can tell by this awkward open.
Go vote for those things though at independentwrestling.tv. It's the IWTV Indie Wrestling Awards, let's say. I should start off by saying, as we record here, of course, from the Paul Greer Studios, with this show brought to you by the mysterious benefactors, the Goldsteins. Happy Hanukkah to our mysterious benefactors and everyone else celebrating as we are in the midst of that while we record this today. So for those,
light your candles up. Light the candles, right?
Not all of them at once, John. That's not how that works.
Yeah, you do one every day.
Yeah. Light the menorah with
I
Kirk
saw
Douglas.
Crazy Nights.
Yeah, Kirk Douglas, Goldie Hawn, and the late Dinah Shore, as the song goes. Hey, do you know Dreidel, Dreidel, Dreidel? You know that song?
Probably. I don't know. When Adam Sandler was popular on the radio in like 1992.
It's I listened to the piece of shit car song, Ode to My Car. Remember that?
Yeah.
I listened to that recently, just as I was talking about it, and I couldn't remember. But anyway, we asked you guys for questions, and look,
we didn't get too much stuff.
Yeah, I'm gonna come out and say that sometimes when we do this and you guys give us things to talk about, it feels like you don't listen to the podcast because it's the same questions that we have talked about. So I encourage you to go back and listen if you really want those answers. You can find them because over 200 episodes, all of those things have been discussed in terms of wish list people to bring in, people we've enjoyed bringing in.
You want to know what's on my wish list? Just doing a show. That's on my wish list.
That is number one on the wish list right now. Yeah.
Yeah. But I wish I could book Kurt Hertz right now. I mean, anybody. Seriously. Just bring it on.
Kurt Hertz would be an amazing booking right now.
New father, Kurt Hertz.
Oh, good for you.
You got nothing to say to that. No reply to that one, huh?
I mean, congrats to Kurt Hertz. I
don't know how new it is, but I know that he had a child at some point.
During 2020?
It could happen 2 years ago. I don't know.
I feel like it did happen 2 years ago.
He still reads everything in the trainee student chat, though. He's still in there. No replies, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, we got listen. We're just as bored and have nothing to do as everybody else right now, pretty much. Like, it's just, it is boredom. Let's just maybe we'll just talk life. Like a regular just radio duo. Like Sirius XM.
We will get back to reviewing shows at some point. I know some of you want that, but
we actually had this discussion off air before we started recording, and let's get into why we're not reviewing shows, why it's just you and I for a lot of these podcasts. And that is when we decided that we were going to attempt to do this remotely and get guests on and, really just kind of try to expand upon our content, we realized that not too many wrestlers are technologically prepared for things like this. And on the other hand, we are not very technologically prepared for like some of these blog talk radio podcasts where you could just call in and we can be recording through our phone. I don't have a soundboard. I don't know how they do any of that. We use Squadcast, a little plug ski there, even though it costs money and they don't give it to us for free. We use Squadcast, which is a very it's a very simple tool. However, it is not compatible with any Apple products, including iPhones or iPads or anything like that. And a lot of people have iPhones, so that makes it difficult for people that don't have like a desktop or a laptop to be able to just hop right on the podcast with us. So it makes it's just another hurdle to jump through to try to get people on. And that's, I guess, a really long explanation, but it's why it's so difficult to get Patreon content and other content, because we are still trying as much as possible to not, go into a room or whatever and record a podcast, and it creates some hurdles.
Yeah, and as an Apple user, I can attest to this. I, however, have the one place it is compatible is if you have an iMac, so like a huge Apple desktop, and then you download Google Chrome or something like that, which I have. And that's how I Squadcast, for all you tech nerds out there. It does not...
that does not work with an iPad, because I tried to do that with an iPad, and I put Chrome on there and everything, and it didn't work. So
it still doesn't work with an iPad or an iPhone. And if you have a huge iMac, it does not, or MacBook, it does not work with Safari either. So
Tech Talk this week on the AIW podcast.
Well, if you remember, a few months back, we did have Car Talk on the AIW podcast.
Yeah, now it's Tech Talk. I mean, yeah. So that trust me, we want to get together and we want to review these shows. But the thing is I just don't think it's as fun for Steve and I to review the shows. Like, I like having kind of a rotating talking head panel.
Yeah,
because I don't see everything that goes on at the show or goes on backstage, or, there's a lot of things that I miss, and I like getting those other perspectives on when we're reviewing a show. And, like, for example, we still haven't reviewed Hell on Earth from last year, and, I did over the weekend I did get a Patreon podcast with the Rip City Shooters, Shooting with the Shooters, episode 2. And they talk about how, Kevin Nash was nearly kidnapped from the hotel by other people. And, you got to have those guys on when we review Hell on Earth. And, I guess good news is, they say the vaccine is rolling out this week. We're, hopefully, definitely on the, coming to an end of all the COVID craziness and everything, but who knows? Maybe we're not. But so we're trying to. I said that I wanted to try to keep producing this podcast and providing updates and getting content out there as frequent as possible. So we're sticking to it, even though we have no solid topics to talk about right now.
And no updates. We do have some somber news, not to report, but, we always get asked about wish lists. And it's something that I think we've mentioned on Twitter. I know recently I had brought it up to somebody because I saw someone ask on Twitter about Zeus, a.k.a. Debo, a.k.a. Tiny Lister, and he unfortunately passed away last week, but he was a long-time AIW wishlist guy.
Huge wish list. I had been trying to track him down for years, and I found emails
he was
that
part
didn't
of
work.
why you got IMDb Pro, right?
Exactly. That is why I got IMDb Pro, because I was trying to find okay, if you sign up for IMDb Pro, I think it's $20 a month or whatever, but it'll give you Hollywood agent contacts, who represents who on there and things like that. And whoever was listed as his representation just never got back to me. And then, I would find a Facebook, but then, it was abandoned, and I would find his Instagram, but the messaging was off, or his Twitter, his DMs were blocked. And then I swear to God, last week I was, like I said, I was watching a lot of different wrestling and, just staying motivated. And I was watching ECW and old WWF stuff on the network. And I was I just started looking up people, and I was rattling off different meet and greets I want to do and things. And I was I started looking for Tiny Lister again. And I found that on his Instagram, because now you can put an email, there can be an email tab. It can be follow, message, email. And he put an email on his Instagram account. And I was oh, he finally has an email listed. So it has to be an updated email. It has to work, since this section is a fairly new section, I believe, on Instagram. So I was okay, made a note of it, saved the email onto my phone, and I was just continued on my lists of who I want. And then sure enough, man, he passed away.
Yeah, so
bummed, because he's a guy that I think would have really drawn in multiple crowds to AIW. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Because you have just people that know him from wrestling, and then you have people that just know him as an actor and know his film roles. And I was just that to me was just the number one guy we could get to really pull a big crowd when it's allowed.
Yeah, similar to the idea behind bringing in ICP.
Right.
Crossover
fans, and just trying to expose different eyes to AIW.
Yeah, so it would have been one of those things where those people continue to come, you hope, and
you're not going to retain them all, but the idea is you retain, even if you retain 5, that's 5 people that were never going to come before.
Yeah.
And that is really the name of the game when it comes to independent wrestling, is trying to figure out how to draw a crowd and then retain a small portion of them going forward, because you're not going to retain 100% of them ever. But if you can continue to, bring new people in and then retain a couple, and, it just keeps building and building and building. So that's why, Tiny Lister was just to me, that was the number one guy that you could get.
And I feel like we just we also were all very curious as to what it would be like to hang out with him.
Well, yeah, I mean that goes without saying. I mean that's a big part of the checks and balances of who to book, who not to book. But I mean, Zeus fucking ruled as a wrestler. Like, oh yeah. I mean, okay, let me clarify. Like, he wasn't a good wrestler, but he ruled as a wrestler.
The whole persona,
yeah, the whole presence, everything he did, the whole presence. The one thing that I never understood is why the fuck did the WWF push No Holds Barred so hard, and then they debuted it on pay-per-view, the match and the movie and all this other stuff, but like Hulk Hogan isn't Hulk Hogan in the movie. Like, he should have been Hulk Hogan in the movie, I think. Instead of Rip.
Rip.
Like, don't you think if they're gonna push it like that, like, he should have just been Hulk Hogan? It's like a movie about wrestling.
Yeah, like Zeus becomes,
and because Zeus comes into the WWF as Zeus.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't Hulk Hogan just be Hulk Hogan in the movie?
Right. They carry over the entire Zeus character.
That never made sense to me.
It's the exact same thing.
And it was so confusing to me as a little kid. I mean, maybe this has been explained somewhere. If it has, please, somebody let us know. But that never made sense to me. Like, why wouldn't he just been Hulk Hogan? Because they did all this, crossover promotion on WWF TV, and Zeus comes in as a character, and then like you watch the movie, and it's just like, who? This isn't Hulk Hogan. This is Rip.
And basically everything storyline that they were doing was like stuff Hulk Hogan was going through. Oh, here's this really wildly popular wrestler, and he's gonna film TV shows and movies or something too. Like, yeah, it's all the same. Maybe they didn't want you to think that Hulk Hogan was involved in that underground world where they found Zeus.
Yeah, I don't know. It was always very strange to me. But to me, as a promoter, I thought that Tiny Lister had so much legs to bring in a completely different audience and cater to the nostalgic audience that comes to AIW as well. Like, it just seemed like so perfect to me. Like, Zeus fucking ruled. Like, he ruled. Like, there's no, that's bummed me out. I was super bummed about it. Like, I don't know who else is out there. I'd really have to buckle down and like think, but I don't know who else out there could have brought like such a crossover, Yeah,
I mean, I guess maybe David Arquette still, but
yeah. I mean, David Arquette or Dennis Rodman. Those just, like, I don't know who else.
Dennis Rodman is on the list, folks, of wish list. By the way, if you're wondering, kind of oddball wish list things, that's another
Rodzilla.
One. We've looked.
Did you watch the last? Did you watch The Last Dance?
Of course I did.
Okay, here is. I don't know why I think about this, but so whatever episode it is, when they get into Dennis Rodman going to WCW, and he skips practice and all that stuff, and he comes back, and Jordan just keeps yelling, "Rodzilla, Rodzilla." Do you think that Michael Jordan watched Nitro?
I think he watched it while Rodman was on it.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I kept thinking about that. Like, how else does Michael Jordan know? Like he just kept yelling Rodzilla at him.
Yeah, it's
like
not
he had to have watched.
It wasn't trending on Twitter back then.
Right, but I'm saying he had to have watched. Like Michael Jordan had to have watched at least that episode of Monday Nitro.
Oh yeah, I would say hands down. Of course he did. The moment they found out, when they were like, "Where's Dennis?" and they find out, oh, he is at WCW Wrestling. Of course, Jordan watched it, probably while smoking a big fat cigar and drinking scotch.
Yeah, I don't know. That just popped into my head, but yeah, Dennis Rodman is definitely on the wish list. I don't know. It's so weird. Like, the wish list thing is, the list is getting much. It's always evolving, and it's getting much smaller because like, there's not, like, once you get out of the 90s, there's a big gap in people that I would really want to book. You know what I mean? Like, sure. As far as, it's like they're dead or they're super rich, and that they don't do any events. Like,
yeah,
there's not a lot of people that fall into that category anymore.
Like, I mean, I guess it's still kind of the 90s, but obviously if you could book a Fred Durst meet and greet or appearance.
Well, that barely has any crossover. You know what I mean? Like,
it's got the wrestling crossover a little bit. Yeah.
Kind of. Not really, though.
Yeah, everything else basically really doesn't. Like, I think of people that wrestling fans would be curious to come see, and then other people might come to wrestling because of it, but guys that would maybe be wrestling fans, and I think about, like, it's got to be that MTV early 2000s culture, late 90s, so like if you had Busta Rhymes or Method Man or Exhibit, right? If those guys
okay, but you're getting a little wild, but what I will say,
not, but you know what I mean? Like, they are not related to wrestling, but there's
so I mean, it's weird that you brought this up, but I was thinking, like, I was actually thinking about this, and I'm sure that there's like wrestling vendors and things that do things like this, but I was just like, man, I should just buy table space at like these movie conventions that come through town and just like book some gigantic like cults figure, and just do a meet and greet all weekend. Like, I was thinking about that. I don't know. Like, I literally was like looking into that on Saturday, utilizing my IMDb Pro, because I was like, oh man, like I saw John Carpenter's doing a virtual signing, and I was just like, that's weird. He does signings, and I was like, imagine if I just like found out what his fee was, and I just like went to Cinema Wasteland, and I was just like, oh, by the way, like I have John Carpenter coming in on Saturday, and then just totally worked out a same type of wrestling deal, and it has to be similar. It has to be similar business practices is what I think. Like, I think it really boils down to like, okay, here's a fee for this amount of time, and you know what I mean? Like, or it's like, here's a fee and I want, half of this for however many time. Like, it has to be a very similar business practice. So I was just like, man, like maybe we got to start expanding our horizons, because I talked to Joe Bob Briggs when we did that one convention, and he was doing these shows, and I was just like, how does this work? Because this is my thing, is like, when I do go to these other conventions, I love trying to learn how that aspect of the business works or whatever. And he was doing a live show, and it was basically like, it sounded like when he was coming to Cleveland, because he was going to do an additional live show at the Capitol Theater, it sounded like it was like they were just splitting, like there was just a ticket plan. He didn't get a fee. It was like he lived and died by whatever amount of tickets sold.
Yeah.
And then like I talked to this, like I've talked to like this guy that does all this artwork or whatever for these big movie companies, and I was like, well, how does this work? Like, how can you sell this? And he said, like, well, I put in my deal, like I get to sell X amount of these on my own. Like, I just love learning all these different kind of little niche entertainment things, and I'm sure comedy works similar in a way. And I know you and I had talked pre-pandemic about trying to figure out how to bring in Andrew Dice Clay and do something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm just ready to just get into all sorts of different, I'm ready to just like spider web out the things that we do, I think.
It's funny. I was going to bring up Joe Bob Briggs if you didn't, because a few weeks ago I was having lunch with Shane Torres and Mike Cronin, a couple of comics who were in town, and for some reason Shane brought up Joe Bob Briggs, and we were talking about it, and he's like, "Do you guys know who that is?" I was like, "Hell yeah, I know who that is." And I was telling him how, because he was wondering if he still did screenings and did shows. I was like, he did one in Cleveland, not that like
last
back.
October he did one.
Yeah,
I was out of town for it, but I missed it. But I like offered to kind of to help him out, and I sent it out on the AIW social media and stuff like that. And yeah, I don't know. I just like finding out about those different things because like, I also think about like, man, maybe we should just run like a pop culture convention or something. Like there's so many weird different avenues, but then it's just like, it's probably such an undertaking at the same time.
It is. I'm sure that is, but I feel like that's something we could collectively pull our resources together and do a pretty good job in terms of who's there. I think and that people would enjoy. I'll tell you, I have a person on the wish list for AIW.
Who's that?
That's crossover still, and that's Mr. T.
Yeah, but I mean, who knows with that guy? Like, I've looked into trying to find him though. I really have, because I really wanted to try my hardest, especially around Rubber City Con, because we had Cowboy Bob, and I was trying really hard to get Paul Orndorff, and then I was also looking into Mr. T because, obviously Hulk Hogan it's just, there's probably absolutely no way that we could ever pull Hulk Hogan, but if we can get that WrestleMania 1, main event, like that was my big thing, is I really wanted to do Cowboy Bob and Paul Orndorff photo ops because they were involved in the main event. Mm-hmm. And obviously, you can't get Piper, but that's stuff I looked into. But yeah, I don't know, like I just, sometimes my brain like just starts working in a weird way, and I think of these ideas and I think like, well, like I've bought table space to promote AIW at like these different conventions, and like, some of them don't go too well, obviously. Mm-hmm. But it's very interesting to, talk to some of these actors or whatever who are, it's kind of like indie wrestling, like especially like cult movies and stuff like that. It's just like they don't, they're not fucking A-listers. They have very niche fan bases, and some people, they don't even really have a fan base, but they'll be like, oh, I remember you from that movie. I'll buy a photo or whatever. And, I've talked to some of those people, and like, it seems like a lot of them just come in, and it's just like, you buy my flight and I'm here. And then they get like a free space to try to make their own money. So, I mean, I don't know, this is totally like, has nothing to do with wrestling, but it's just weird shit that goes through my mind to think about, like, cause not a lot of like cool stuff happens in Cleveland really, like, and it's just like, we get the big giant convention that like Wizard World, but like that is like, I'm talking about like low level fucking, something like low level that would draw in a couple hundred people or something. Because we also, we took part in that Geek Fest convention, which did fairly okay, and nothing like that has ever come back to town. So I think about stuff like that, like, maybe doing like a wrestling weekend, but then you add different elements of pop culture and, like some stand-up comedy or, some celebrity signings that have nothing to do with wrestling, movie people. I don't know. I mean, and this could not work at all. This could be totally like off base, but like when I went to that toy show that Tom Troll promoted, I was blown away by the crowd at that thing, in the middle of the pandemic. Like it drew very well, and it looked like a lot of people made a lot of money, and it was, it was interesting. So I just think about different weird, interesting things to do.
That's a whole other element that you could have. I mean, you can have an entire toy collectors section to a pop culture event as well. It could be one part meeting celebrities or people who've been in your favorite TV shows or movies or favorite wrestlers and things, but you can also then have like a purchasing area or something, stuff like that.
Vendor area.
Vendor. Yeah. Yes, there you go. I couldn't think of words. What was it, the horror convention where we did the screening of the Wrestle Rager main event?
Yeah, we did that at Cinema Wasteland, which is like probably the biggest movie memorabilia connection in the area. It runs it runs twice a year. Chandler and I got a table one other time there because they have like a big waiting list, and they had somebody pull out the day of, and we were on the waiting list, and they knew that we were local. So, Chandler and I went and set up there, like, man, I don't know, probably 20, 2010 or 11, maybe even before that, maybe 2009. I don't remember, but I remember Lloyd Kaufman, the guy that runs Troma Films, bought a VHS tape of the Best of Tim Meadows off of Chandler for $1. But then, we never got to go back because their waiting list is so long. And whenever we did that 2 years ago, I think, it was the same thing. They're just like, hey, we had cancellation. You're next on the list. Do you want to do it? So we went and did it, and we ended up doing pretty well. And then they asked us to do a panel, which we had no fucking idea what to do. So we just showed the Wrestle Rager main event and talked, and we had a decent amount of people in there. Yeah, I don't know, like 40, 50 people in there. Yeah, in this room to screen it. And
Duke kept walking out because he was getting phone calls about some appliance at his home.
Yeah, he's getting like a refrigerator delivered or something.
Yeah, or a dishwasher or some shit. I don't know. Only Duke would be. He's on the live mic and then talking and giving live commentary, and then you just hear him go, "Hello," and then put the mic down. Like, dude, you were mid-sentence about whatever's happening on the screen here.
And I mean, maybe all these ideas are popping into my head just because we're so bored and we have no shows being planned and nothing to schedule.
Could be.
But I don't know. It's something that I thought about over the weekend. Just these ideas just pop into my head sometimes.
I have a question.
Sure.
Over the last couple years, we've done a good job of restocking and having really good younger talent. It seems like these companies with larger money, let's say from MLW and above, are really trying to grow even more in terms of bringing in people. Is there any concern that by the time we roll back around, we're not going to have a lot of those guys? And you know what I mean? Like, we haven't been able to run shows with the next crop of students from the AIW Academy, and they haven't been able to learn because there have been no shows. So we're kind of behind the 8 ball there. But let's say the Lee Moriartys and the Trey Lamars and the Dominic Guarinis are gone, are eaten up or signed.
It is somewhat concerning, and this is why I've gotten on the students, and I don't know if I talked about this last week or not, but I got on the students about how things are not being properly paid forward, and there's like a big kind of drop off in, okay, this is how we do it, down to the next crop, down to the next crop, down to the next crop. Somewhere it kind of like things got stopped, and maybe it's the lack of shows or whatever, but I've been going to training, and it is really astonishing how few people are coming to train. Mm-hmm. Which, it's one thing for pandemic concerns. Obviously I understand that, but a lot of it is just lack of motivation, I think, right now. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a big problem because you start to see like, oh, there's no show, so there's no desire from a lot of these people to try to improve right now. And it is somewhat concerning, but at the same time, I think that we have enough of a core that would be available when we start back up, hopefully, or even if some people are gone, if we still had access to them, to book, enough to get things rolling. Like, I have a big plan for us to, when we come back, and a lot of it would be, if the support is there, adding a more regular rotation for new people and new students. So like, we say we do a show on a Thursday at the Winchester, and it would have a shell of AIW familiar faces, and then that's where you can bring in a carload that normally isn't on an AIW show and say, okay, we're going to do, we're going to put milk chocolate in there with To Infinity and Beyond and see how that goes. And then you also have, your students that haven't totally broken through yet. Like, you put TKD on there and showcases, and you put Arthur MacArthur on there, and, different things. And you start kind of developing, and that gives the opportunity to, okay, maybe Jocelyn Navarro and Ziggy Haim are not ready to have a showcase, big time showcase matchup at the Odeon. But if you put them on at the Winchester show, there's a lot less risk going into it to fill that room and make it a break-even situation. So that's one thing that I have been developing, is like a system to develop these kind of people that we've discovered through the talent initiatives and the people that are coming through the school, or people that have transferred from another school to the AIW school. And it's just like a way to introduce them, see what works, get them their reps in, and, just get them ready to, like I said, and like, this is just an example, like the AIW crowd would probably be accepting if, first show back at the Odeon, Jocelyn Navarro had a match. But to me, I think that there's more meaning to her if now she's valeting for PB right now, and then maybe she has matches at the Winchester and kind of earns her respect of the fan base, and then gets, works her way up to a bigger opportunity to where it makes sense. And you can apply that to a lot of people, TKDs or Arthur MacArthur's, or, people that came through the new talent initiatives, Jackson Stone, all these different guys that we were kind of like, what do we do with these guys, and, how do we start introducing them? The plan is to kind of, when we've gone to the Winchester, and this is just an example of a venue, you get pretty much an AIW show. The plan is to, give you a couple of those surefire matches, and then let's take some risks with some people that, are unproven. And that's not a fair description of them, but just newer into the AIW fold, and kind of use it to develop, sort of thing.
Along those lines, one of the things that AIW has been doing in the last few years, that a lot of people have sung our praises on, is developing actual stories within, the context of matches and why they're taking place, and ongoing rivalries and things. Will you still be concerned about those and having reasons for them, and that's how these people are going to be built in slowly but surely, or will it be more about that wow kind of match just to get people? Like, what do you think gets people, and from a fan standpoint, more invested early on when we get back?
So I think, like, obviously there's opportunities to develop stories, but when you're coming in unknown or unproven or whatever, I think early on it's more about showcasing your abilities and selling yourself to the fans, and then once the fans buy in, then you can really, I guess, once the fans buy in, you can really kind of maneuver the character more, because people are more familiar, so they'll understand the little nuances of whatever the gimmick is or whatever they've been doing. And there's a lot more to do. I think it's hard to come in come in with a big story unless it's like, an example would be like if Josh Bishop the Josh Bishop of now came in totally unknown and took out Matt Justice because he looks a part. Mm-hmm. But Josh Bishop didn't always look that part. So, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
He had to work his way up and earn the respect. So, like, there are times where somebody can come in, boom, right into a story. But I think, especially with the AIW fan base, is the talent has to sell themselves to the fans first, and then once they buy in and they start paying attention to the things you do and what you are, and is this a baby face or is this a heel or whatever, I think then it becomes easier to put them in stories once whatever their characterization is or whatever, like how, like once the fans know what they do, then it's easier to then, okay, now here comes Milk Chocolate. They're gonna feud with PME because they've proven themselves multiple times at the Winchester shows, and like people have to buy in first. Like it's I don't want to be like, okay, like we're back at the Odeon, here is 5 matches of people that you're unfamiliar with, and it makes it an uphill battle for the talent. It makes it an uphill battle for AIW, and then you could maybe not have some of your faithful fans that have been come back the next show. You know what I mean? So I think there's a process, and I really want to utilize like venues like the Winchester or the Goldthorn Brewery, if it still exists, who knows, to be like, okay, like let's give some, like, a couple really surefire can't miss matches, and then let's fill out the card throughout the night and see if the fans are going to buy what Ethan Wright is selling, and whatever.
Sure. I think, all right, we could probably wind this down, and I want to, with one final question, as we bring it full circle. We talk about the future, and we talk about wish lists. My personal for AIW future 2021, when things open back up, wish list question to you is not celebrity necessarily, but we were going to have a very awesome surprise in Gauntlet for the Gold. Will that surprise still happen? And can that surprise get a little bit of a run?
Well, I mean, there were a few surprises that were really...
This one's in great shape.
There were a few surprises that were really ironed out, like, within 2 weeks into the Gauntlet, because, for people that have forgotten, the Gauntlet was still on until a week before. That's when everything really broke with the pandemic and the shutdowns and things. So there were a lot of really good Gauntlet for the Gold surprises booked.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to lie, I've not stayed in contact with those people. So I don't know. But what I will say is none of them are off the table. And like you said, we don't know what roster spots are going to be open. We definitely are going to need to plug people in different places, I would imagine. There, as speculated upon, there's probably going to be some company departures based on just things that have happened throughout COVID, not for public consumption, but there are spots available, so I don't know, like, that is a good question, but me, like, going back to what I just said, there are people that need to work their way up, and there are people that you can debut in a big spot, and those people, and it's multiple people that were going to come into the company at Gauntlet for the Gold in 2020, I think also still apply to that big impact sort of introduction. So I wouldn't expect to maybe just see whatever these ideas are just are randomly on a show. You know what I mean? Like, here's blah, blah, blah versus blah, blah, blah. And everyone goes, wow. You know, I think it's more of I still do believe, which I realize a lot of wrestling promotions and fans don't seem to believe in this anymore, but I believe in the moments and the pops and the surprises. And I think it's sometimes worth spending big money on a run-in versus spending big money to just have a match. I think that AIW, and this is why I don't like the no fan stuff or the limited capacity stuff, is AIW is a promotion that is built on the energy of the fans, and you cannot like, you can't even really explain when something goes good and there's a big pop. Like, and you know, some limited examples of that are Scott Steiner was just announced as a signing at Absolution. The siren goes off. He's there to team with Matthew Justice, or ICP is there just to sign. You know, they run out and they beat up 40 Acres. And there's other instances where, you know, like a couple times, like Joey Janela, it happened twice. He is gone for a while, snuck into the building. Nobody has any idea he's there. Stuff like that means more, I think, as far as, man, that was crazy. I didn't expect that. I think that builds equity with fans. Whether, you know, and it builds more equity, obviously, with the local fans that buy tickets, because some of that stuff does not translate to video. But I guess I'll just leave it at that. There were a lot of good surprises booked for Gauntlet for the Gold that were going to be probably very large reactions, I would think. I would hope. So hopefully those can happen, because it seems like, you know, I don't know how this vaccine thing's going, but it could be like, okay, like March things can open up, you know, so we might start right at Gauntlet for the Gold, you know,
sure.
Like, you know what I'm saying?
Be a bad starting point, realistically, you know what I mean? Like, it's a good reset, because from a story standpoint, all right, well, we have a champion and we get a winner of that. Boom, we know who a number one contender is without having to worry about it.
Which I know that was a question asked, like, who are the number one contenders in the Discord? I don't even know, because I don't even know who's going to be on the roster by the time we start back up. So I don't want to speculate, you know, like, we have a core, obviously, but things can happen. Signings could happen. You know, it just, people could quit wrestling, you know, like, I don't know. There's all sorts of different things that could happen. So it has to be like, when we get a definitive, like, okay, we're going, like, this show is happening, then I'll be able to be like, okay, here we go, you know. And obviously we will try to stick to where we stopped off, but there are going to be opportunities to do different things. And I do have a plan for whenever we can come back. Like, I would maybe like it to be more than one show, you know, like,
yeah.
It's going to depend on what the restrictions are, what we can do, how we need to adapt. But I don't really like doing the what if and the, you know, hey, like, we can do this. Like, I have a blueprint plan laid out, but I'm not going to start acting on it until we know, like, hey, this is what you can do. This is what you can't do. This is where you can do it. This is where you can't do it. Like, stuff like that. Like, for all we, like, you know, like, we can do shows in Ohio right now, but would Cuyahoga County allow it? Would Cleveland allow it? Who knows? You know, like, there's a lot of things are coming down to, like, small government. So it's like, okay, like, here's the national protocols. Now here's the state protocols. Now here's the county protocols. Now here's the city protocols. So it's different everywhere, you know, like, because everything is a quote unquote suggestion. You know, like, look at, you know, tonight, for example, everyone's got to be in at 10 p.m. But if you're at the Monday Night Football game for the Browns, you're allowed to be out. You know, there's just different. Yeah. So that's why I just want to wait and see and whatever. But there are a lot of plans. There's a lot of, plan A, B, and C, but I'm not going to get too far ahead of myself because, I want to see when the dust settles what we can and can't do 100%. And, as the vaccines roll out and hopefully, they work and people are more accepting to getting back to somewhat normal, then we'll really know what we can do.
There you go. Well said. And I think that's a perfect point to wrap this thing up. And
it took us a little while to get going, but it takes us a little while to kick it into that quote unquote second gear, as they say. But
come for the tech talk, stay for the
life talk.
Stay for the rest of it. And we'll cover this next week. But I end on this because next week is a Monday when things get released, but Sunday, December 20th, very special day in AIW history. Happy birthday, John Thorne.
It is my birthday week. It is. And I'm sticking to that nobody gets any older thing in 2020. So, we just stay the same age, and move forward into 2021.
Yeah. By the time my birthday was in March and we went right into COVID. By the time we get out of it, I'm going to have my next birthday. I'm going to feel like
I know. And it's just
year.
And it's just what can I do? I can't go out with my friends and get drinks. I can't even get multiple people together to go to dinner because it's just I could get 10 people to show up, no problem. So it's okay, well, I don't even want to get into that. Well, you can come, but you can't come. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's just you got to find a restaurant and then everyone's got to be gone by 9:00 anyway. And it's just I don't know. Maybe I'll just fly to Vegas by myself and see what happens. Or maybe I'll just do nothing. We'll see. But it is my birthday on December 20th, so mark your calendars.
You folks will have to tune in next week to find out what John Thorne did for his birthday. That will leave you
probably be nothing. Probably be nothing.
That's called a cliffhanger, folks. We'll leave you with that, and we'll talk to you next week. For John Thorne, my name's Steve Guy. We'll talk to you right here on The Card is Going to Change.